The Cup Series traveled out of the United States to Mexico for its inaugural Cup race. And I gotta say, it was a pretty good event. And it was pretty good to be SVG. Hey there, race fans. It's Race Day Top 5 with me, Frank 5. Mexico City, home, and it's the capital of the entire country of Mexico. At the Autodrome Hermanos Rodriguez, a circuit that has played host to many forms of racing, Formula One, and other forms of motorsports. It was home to NASCAR Xfinity Series for 4 years, from 2005 to 2008. And this weekend, the NASCAR Cup Series made its debut at the Autodrome Hermanos Rodriguez. And for the first time there, it was a very entertaining event with a lot of battles all around the pack. And one driver, one very happy driver, comes out on top, punching his ticket to the playoffs. Let's get into all that went down in the inaugural running of the Cup Series at this facility. Number 1, SVG victorious. Shane Van Gisbergen picks up his first win of the 2025 Cup Series season and his second career win, winning the Viva Mexico 250 at Autodrome Hermanos Rodriguez yesterday, beating out Christopher Bell, Chase Elliott, Alex Bowman, and Michael McDowell for the victory. A great performance by Shane Van Gisbergen, and we should not be surprised by this. When this guy joined the NASCAR scene in 2023 at the inaugural running of the Chicago Street Course race, he had the fastest car there, and he was able to win that race, passing Justin Haley for the win and the lead and the win late in the race, and was able to drive off and win the event in his first ever Cup start. And nobody had ever heard of this guy until he joined that race, and he became a superstar in just a couple of hours. And that would lead to more opportunities for him in the NASCAR Cup Series, driving a couple of races, and then he would shift his focus to driving full-time in Xfinity in 2024, where he was able to win some road course races. He made the playoffs. He was unfortunately a first round elimination, but still was a very impressive rookie year, and also dabbled with the Cup Series last year. This year, he joined the NASCAR Cup Series full-time, driving for Trackhouse Racing, and it has been a little bit of a struggle for SVG because, of course, many of the venues that he's going to this year in a Cup car were going to be a little bit of a challenge for him, particularly in the ovals. We know when it comes to road courses with his experience that he's going to be a threat. This year at COTA, he had a good car, but it wasn't good enough to beat guys like Christopher Bell, and he ultimately ended up finishing in 6th spot. In the last couple races, though, Shane Van Gisbergen has actually performed pretty well decently. He had a top 15 in the Coca-Cola 600. He had a really good run at Nashville, but didn't get the result that he hoped for. He had a good run at Kansas the week before, a few weeks before the 600, and he also had a top 20 at Michigan last weekend. But everybody knew coming into this weekend, Mexico City, that Shane Van Gisbergen was going to be the man to beat. And he started all that by winning the pole for Sunday's race on Saturday, when qualifying got cut short due to weather moving in and us having to shift focus to the Xfinity Series race. SVG would start on the pole. But going into Sunday's race in the number 88 car, he was not feeling good, actually. He was not, I guess he was feeling a little bit under the weather, sicky, but he was able to strap into the car and get into the race car and drive. And he had a lot of battles on track with many guys. He had battles with guys like Ty Gibbs, Christopher Bell, Austin Cindric, among a few. He had to work for it for the most part. He had, I think, the best car, and it definitely showed in the very end of the race. But I think he had to have a lot of battles and get back some of the track position between guys that were on different strategies at the beginning, because we did have some weather at the start of the race that put on a lot of people in a precarious position to put on wet weather tires until the track finally started to dry out and we put back on slicks for the rest of the race. SVG kind of had to work a little bit of the strategy, and his crew chief, Steven Duran, called a really good race, and they were able to pit early in the final stage of the race. After they won stage number 2, they pitted early in the final stage to try to put themselves in position to stay in front the moment the race was over. And they got a massive break when the caution came out for Carson Hocevar spinning at turn number 15. And that brought all the guys that had not yet pitted to come to pit road and pretty much sacrifice their track position. And it put SVG in the control spot for the final restart of the race, and despite side-by-side with Christopher Bell down the long straightaway before they got into turn number 1, SVG came away on top, and then he started to pull away, and he did not look back despite all the battles that were going on in the middle of the pack behind him. None of them generated a caution, and SVG cruised to victory by a 16.5-second margin over Christopher Bell. That's the biggest margin with this next-gen car since Kyle Larson's win in the fall race last year. I mean, that was a remarkable performance by Shane Van Gisbergen. And this win secures his spot into the playoffs. Now, I know there's a lot of people say, he did deserve the win because he was the fastest car. True. But there, of course, are going to be people saying he doesn't deserve to be in the playoffs because have you seen his performance this year and where he was in points? He was 33rd in points entering this race yesterday. Yes, I mean, they make a valid point, but at the end of the day, he had the best car when it mattered most yesterday. And, of course, at road courses, you would expect him to be up front, to be battling for wins, battling up at the front of the field. You would expect that from Shane Van Gisbergen, and that's what happened yesterday. And after the race, he was very, very happy despite being under the weather. He was very thrilled to know that he was going to be in the playoffs, and of course he has the tradition of kicking the rugby football into the grandstand section. It didn't fully get into the grandstand section where they have turns 11, 12, and 13, but he was able to kick it into the picnic section, so that was a positive. But it was a really good performance by SVG, and now this puts two of the Trackhouse cars in the playoffs, because remember, Ross Chastain won the Coke 600. Now SVG has joined the playoffs, which leaves Daniel Suarez the only driver that has got to get into the postseason. But a great performance. Shane Van Gisbergen, Stephen Doran, his crew chief, Trackhouse Racing. A great win yesterday in Mexico, and they're going to the playoffs. Number 2, solid runs by a lot of drivers who have great road course experience yesterday. When you come to road courses, you'd expect the big names that know how to run the road courses to be up front and finish up at the front. And some of those guys had some great results yesterday. Kicking it off with Christopher Bell, our runner-up finisher behind SVG. He started 31st yesterday because I don't think they got the qualifying performance they would have hoped for on Saturday. But thanks to the weather at the beginning of the race, when it started to rain, it altered many people's strategies. Some guys elected to stay out on dry tires, which I don't know why they did, but it helped guys like Christopher Bell work his way through the traffic and get up towards the top 10 and top 5. And Bell pretty much remained there the rest of the race. I mean, he had a really good race car, and if SVG didn't win this, was not in contention yesterday, and if he didn't exist, this could have been Christopher Bell's race, because that drive from 31st all the way up towards the front of the field was remarkable. And of course, Christopher Bell won the first road course race this year at Circuit of the Americas, so you would kind of expect Bell to be up there in the mix. The big question was he going to be able to get up there because of where he was starting earlier in the day? But that was not a problem. He got up there and came away with a second place result. A nice job by the 20 team. Then we got Chase Elliott, still dubbed the Road Course King because among all active drivers right now, he has the most wins at 7. But he is still yet to win a road course with this next-gen car since we introduced it back in 2022. There have been times where he's had a chance to win a road course with this next-gen car, but just hasn't put it all together. Hopefully he will. But yesterday, it was a really good performance by him after starting 12th. He didn't, I think, benefit from the rain at the start of the race yesterday. He kind of fell back some spots. Then as the track started to dry and he put on slicks, the car came to life and he would pass a lot of guys. He got caught up by that final caution because of the strategy that he was on compared to guys like SVG. But after that pit stop, he was able to get a relatively good restart, and he was one of really the only drivers that was able to pick his way through the field and into the top 10, and some those guys in front of him in the last stage, in that last restart, he was able to climb his way from 10th and get all the way up to 3rd and finish on the podium. He's still looking for his first win of the season, but this was a good shot in the arm for Chase Elliott and the 9 team, because after the strong pace they had in Michigan last week, but didn't get the result that they had hoped for, this was a good bounce back for them. Hopefully, they'll get to victory lane soon. And then Alex Bowman. Man, oh man, did he need this. A 4th place result for a guy that also has been pretty good at road course racing. Of course, he won the Chicago street course race last year. But he, like Christopher Bell, started deep in the pack at about 29th spot. But thanks to strategy and those rain tires early on in the race, he too was able to fight his way up towards the front of the field and had a pretty solid race car. The end of the race, that last rung, I think, the tires, he started to abuse them a little too much and pretty much said, okay, Christopher Bell, you go by. I'm not going to, race hard with you because I don't want to lose many more spots. And then Chase came up to him towards the end and he was like, yeah, you take the spot. I'm good with where I am. A 4th place result and 8 stage points in total for Alex Bowman yesterday is big because the last 3 weeks for him have been hell. They have been hell since his top 5 finish at Kansas. He wrecked out early in the Coke 600 while running the top 10. He wrecked out early at Nashville, and he wrecked out early last week in Michigan and had one of the hardest hits that I have seen in a long, long time. And he admitted that he was sore entering this weekend's race. But post-race, you saw him. He had a smile because he was happy to stop the bleeding of the last 3 weeks and get a really good result. Now, with SVG's win, it still puts him lower to the cutoff line. He is still above it, but by just 22 points. They're going to need some good results or a win in the next couple weeks to get out of that danger zone and be a little comfortable if they are to make the playoffs. But a really good result for Alex Bowman yesterday. And then Michael McDowell, who's a really good road course racer, and he won the 2023 Indianapolis road course race. 5th place with his Spire car. Last couple races haven't really been particularly kind to McDowell, but yesterday's result at road course, which you expect him to run up front, a good result, and he had good speed too. He, I think, stayed out at the beginning of the final stage on differing tire strategy. It kind of put him in the middle of the pack, but he didn't lose too many spots, thankfully, and was able to stay on par with all those guys that had good track positions for the rest of the race. So it was a really good performance by Michael McDowell. And all in all, those 4 drivers, Bell, Elliott, Bowman, McDowell, solid runs. They'll take that, and they can. Number 3, heartbreak for Gibbs. If there's one guy that had a really good chance at beating Shane Van Gisbergen yesterday, it was Ty Gibbs, and that's rare to say given the year that he's had. Ty Gibbs, he's also been a really good road course racer. If you all remember, his first ever NASCAR win was in his first start on a road course at Daytona back in 2021 in the Xfinity Series. Yesterday, he had a really good car after a disappointing ending to his race on Saturday when he contended for the lead for a lot of the race. Yesterday, he had a very fast car, and at times, at the beginning of the race, it looked like he was going to be tough for SVG to handle. But then I think as the track dried up after the rain, SVG's car came alive and started getting closer and closer to Gibbs and started to take control of the race, and Gibbs had to kind of play catch up. But Gibbs had a very fast car yesterday. But unfortunately, that last caution of the race, he got caught out because he was on a little different tire strategy and fuel strategy compared to the 88 car. He did come up pit road first, but on that last restart, he couldn't really go anywhere. And when Chase Elliott got by him, it really could have been the battle for the win if maybe there was another yellow late in the race, but that was not the case. We went clean and green the rest of the way, and Gibbs could not seem to pass anybody, and that left him leaving Mexico City with an 11th place result. Now, it's still a good result, especially off of the 3rd place result he had in Michigan last week, but for a team that's still in a little bit of a rebuild phase and trying to find chemistry between Gibbs in his 3rd year in the Cup Series and a rookie crew chief in Tyler Allen, which I'll be quite honest, I don't think it's working really at all. Despite the good run they had last week and the speed they had yesterday, the result is not there for them at the very end. And he burned his rear tires at the very end of that race, and that's one of the reasons why he couldn't really seem to go anywhere. So it was a very tough moment for Ty Gibbs yesterday, considering that he had good speed and possibly had the car that could have won the race if he was able to keep SVG in his rearview mirror. Unfortunately, it's not the case. Part of racing, and instead Gibbs possibly maybe either winning or finishing in top 5 leaves Mexico City in 11th place. Number 4, Hocevar and Stenhouse at it again. Yes, folks, Carson Hocevar got into Ricky Stenhouse Jr. yet again. In the final stage of the race, Carson Hocevar, who was having a bad day because the car was just out of control. He spun around earlier in the race in turn 4, and then he brought out that last caution by spinning in turn 15 and not able to get the car going again. It brought out the yellow and brought those guys to pit road, and Hocevar got lapped eventually. He was trying to fight his way through the field hoping for a caution, and he got into the back. At turn 11, he hit the back bumper of Ricky Stenhouse Jr., which Hocevar went around, and then just a split second later, Stenhouse Jr. went around after getting hit from behind by Hocevar. And of course, you remember a couple weeks ago at Nashville, Carson Hocevar was trying to take a move to the inside of turn number 3 to get by Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who was on the outside. Stenhouse, it kind of looked like was coming down just as Hocevar was trying to throttle it up into turn 3 to get on the inside. They made contact. Stenhouse Jr. backs it into the outside wall, knocked him out of the race, leaving him with a 39th place result while Carson Hocevar were going to finish second. Stenhouse was not pleased about it, but they would eventually reach out. Hocevar reached out to Stenhouse Jr. by a text message. They talked about it and agreed to put it behind. But yesterday, after that hit, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who quite frankly was not having a good day either, where he was running in 25th, got hit. and at the end of the day, he got left with a little worse result. He confronted Carson Hocevar post-race while Hocevar was still sitting in the car buckled up. Stenhouse climbed out and he came into his window and said, "I'm going to beat your you-know-what. You hit me while running a lap down. I'm trying to get as many spots possible, and you hit me. That's the second time you've done this. When we get back to the States, I'm going to beat your you-know-what." So Stenhouse has had enough of it. He said, okay, the first time that we had that contact in Nashville, but we talked it over, let's pray it doesn't happen again. But if it happens again, there's going to be a problem. And it happened yesterday, but it wasn't intentional. Hocevar did not mean to do that intentionally. He just locked it up and it carried too deep into turn 12 by mistake and got Stenhouse Jr., unfortunately, in the process. But Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is about had enough, and he's at his boiling point right now. And sometimes you do not want to mess with Ricky Stenhouse Jr., even though he has been called out for this behavior before in the past, especially on super speedways. But I understand the frustration. This is the second time he's had contact with a guy who many people said is very talented, and he is, but he tends to get too aggressive in situations that can hurt his reputation. So how does this get fixed going forward? They've got to find a way to race each other cleanly, and Carson Hocevar, he's still trying. He's not going to give up being aggressive, but he's also trying to learn how to not be too aggressive. He's got to find that fine line, because right now, with him and Stenhouse Jr., it's not going well, and it's only going to get worse from here if they continue to have run-ins like this. So a tough break yesterday for two guys who have had this problem before, and one of them very unhappy. At number 5, the racing at Mexico City this weekend. I thought it was very, very competitive from start to finish, even though the first lap of the race didn't complete under green because it started to rain and we had to throw the yellow because guys would start probably spinning out eventually with the wet weather conditions. But thanks to the relatively thin air there, the rain was able to pass by. The track dried up a little bit. The racing in the rain tires was very entertaining. I mean, we had a lot of guys going back and forth. I mean, I don't understand why Austin Cindric and Chris Buescher in the first stage, when everybody came in and got wet weather tires, why they elected to stay out and not pit for wet weather tires baffles me, but at the end of the day, they did. I mean, Buescher was able to salvage a 10th place out of it. Cindric finished top 20, which was okay, but based on the pace he had, he probably could have done better. But the battling positions yesterday with the wet weather tires, and then eventually when the track dried up and everyone put slicks back on, the passes and the battles in the pack were outstanding yesterday. And the passing zones that you had, like turn 11, turns 12 and 13, and even 14, turn 4, turns 1 and 2 and 3. I mean, they were really, really fun to watch yesterday. For the Cup Series' first time at Mexico City, I wouldn't say it was a home run success. I thought it was a really good event in general. I mean, I would like for after watching yesterday's race, I would come back to Mexico City next year if I was the Cup Series. The big question is, will they come next year? Because I think that they have to work out some deals with the people that run Autodrome, Hermanos Rodriguez, and the marketing people to bring this event back next year. But I do believe that NASCAR Cup Series has a potential future at this circuit. And for people that like road course racing, and it may not have been a sold-out race for fans like you normally see for a Formula One event here, but the attendance yesterday I felt like was very, very solid, and they had a good time watching these guys, seeing them do a lot of passing and battling for side-by-side, because in Formula One, it's rare that you see that, because sometimes these guys basically, it's like the start of the race is fun, and then after that it's pretty much, follow the leader, unless if you have the drag reduction system to your advantage for some guys. But in general, I really enjoyed yesterday's race with all the passing and all the battles that we had going back and forth. And, the wet weather at the beginning threw a little bit of a curveball into the race, but thankfully, these cars equipped for the wet weather, they had the rain tires, and we got some good racing, and then the track dried out, and we still got some good action out there. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I hope we come back next year, but if we don't and we have to work on a few things, I still hope that NASCAR has a future with this facility, because it was a really, really, really fun race yesterday. Also, I wanted to say a shout out to Daniel Suarez, driver of the number 99 car in the Cup Series. He ran the Xfinity Series race on Saturday, and he crashed the car in qualifying, rolled out the backup car, drove all the way through the field, and won his home race. It was mighty, mighty impressive, and he was so happy in his post-race interview. speaking to the fans on television, first in Spanish, his native tongue. And he did a really good job yesterday in Saturday's Xfinity Series race, winning that thing in a backup car, mighty impressive. And Sunday's race yesterday, he had a good car, but I think he got caught up by that late race yellow and ultimately finished in the 19th position. It was still a decent result, and I don't think it's going to, dampen the mood of him racing at a track in his home country for the NASCAR Cup Series inaugural running of racing in Mexico. I think he's pretty happy in general with the whole weekend. And also, a quick shout out to Denny Hamlin, who was not at the race this weekend for a very good reason. He and his fiancee Jordan welcomed their third child to the world last week, their first ever son, so congrats to the Hamlin family. But he elected to stay behind and tend to his fiancee and his new baby boy, and sat out this weekend's race in Mexico City. But NASCAR did give him a waiver to keep his playoff points and eligibility alive, so Denny Hamlin will still be playoff eligible. And Ryan Truex drove this weekend in the number 11 car, and he actually did a decent job. He did get spun out, but I don't think it was particularly his fault. I feel for the most part he did okay, and he did what he needed to do. He's the simulator driver for Joe Gibbs Racing, so they picked the right guy to fill in for that weekend. Hamlin will be back in the car this weekend at Pocono. So with that being said, we are off to the Tricky Triangle this weekend, the 2.5-mile track that provides a lot of interesting racing, especially with how the turns are shaped, with turns 1 and 2 being Trenton Speedway turns 2 being the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and turn 3 being the Milwaukee Mile. And the long straightaways and all the shifting you're going to see, it's going to be really, really interesting. And the restarts is Pocono, as you all know, they are very entertaining. And unfortunately, it is the final race for NASCAR on Prime for 2025 this year. But we've had a good 4-1 stretch with them. Let's have a good last race with them this weekend. It should be a lot of fun. So the big question is, who's going to come out on top? Can Ryan Blaney replicate his win from a year ago? Will Hamlin come off of having a baby boy to winning at a track where he's been very strong at in the past? We shall find out. But in the meantime, I hope you all have a wonderful Easter week. And to all the dads out there, yesterday, I hope you all had a wonderful Father's Day, and of course, this very special Happy Father's Day to my dad. I love you so much, and I thank you for all the fun that we've had together, and for raising me for being who I am today. But I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Subscribe, like, and congrats once again to Shane Van Gisbergen winning at Mexico City. Have a great week, everybody. Let's go racing!